Hello, everyone. Today we have Patrick Campbell, and he's here to talk about his experiences in the field of business, and hopefully we'll get some insights on a different aspect of business aside from some of the typical routes people take. So if you want to start us off and tell us what your role and title is, and kind of how your day-to-day, what you do in your job on a day-to-day basis.
Sure. Well, thanks for asking me to do this, Naveed. It's great to be here. Patrick Campbell, and my company's called Perth Advisors. I'm the president, and I founded the company about 15 years ago. And our firm is a placement agent firm. So, being a placement agent, I help companies. And in my particular case, about 75% of our business is raising capital for fund managers, in particular, private equity, private real estate, and private debt fund managers. So that's who I am and what we do.
Great. And jumping straight into it, you spoke a little bit about your company, but how specifically is your company different from an investment bank or hedge fund?
Yeah. That's a great question. We're technically an investment banking firm, so I'm a registered broker-dealer with the Securities and Exchange Commission and with FINRA, and we just operate in a very specific part of the market. So we're technically an investment banking firm. Most people call us a placement agent because that's what we're commonly referred to. And then a hedge funds typically invest people's money. If sometimes there are placement agents for hedge funds, we don't do much of that, but we would be the firm that would raise the money for the hedge fund to invest. So that's the difference between us and a hedge fund.
Great. And then so you guys are kind of in a specific niche within um kind of investment banking and hedge funds. Um,
Yeah.
so how would you evaluate some of the prerequisites? So like some educational requirements, skill requirements, or anything else that kind of is specific to your job. And then also how has that played into your career trajectory?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of people that are in my sorts of positions. Typically, I would say it helps if you have some solid math skills and you know something about finance. But I'm a history major undergraduate, and so I basically I worked in a company that set up educational programs in Asia before I got into financial services, and then I went to graduate school at the University of Chicago and got an MBA with a concentration in finance and accounting. So that served me well. I was a stock analyst at a hedge fund before I became the person that raised the money for the hedge fund, and then I branched out and became a partner in a smaller investment banking firm. And then in 2010, I started my own firm here at Perth Advisors. So I think there's a whole bunch of different educational backgrounds in my particular area: liberal arts, finance, lawyers. There's engineers in some cases for kind of more highly technical placement agent work. So different types of people.
And what if you don't mind me asking, what did compel you to start your own business?
Yeah, you know what? I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. My father had several companies, and I worked in his companies, and I've always worked in smaller businesses, and I've enjoyed that. I like being in small teams, and as a small businessman, or business person, you get to do all sorts of different things. So you're not just a salesperson, you're not just an underwriter, you're not just the CFO. You're involved in all aspects of it. And in the partnership I had before this, I was heavily involved, and it was just kind of the next step. In that partnership, I was a junior partner. Most of the people that were there were older than me, and I became a partner. And then I felt at some point that it was time for me to step out on my own and try for myself. And so that's what I did. But it was after watching my father for a good part of my life do his own thing. It was an easier step, I feel, for myself.
Okay, makes sense. And so you touched on a little bit of how your job starting your own company was obviously, much more general. You do a whole lot of different things. So if you could describe a little bit as to what like a day in your life might look like on a given day, how your hours are, how often you might work weekends, how does that work?
Yeah, it's all over the place. So there are times where I work on the weekends. I try not to because you know my son and daughter, so I have family time and I want to spend time with them. But I think one of the interesting things about being an entrepreneur is you get to do a whole bunch of different things. In my job, like last week, I was in Denver for a couple of days, underwriting a deal, meeting with the people there, and doing due diligence. On Friday, I mostly did administrative work, paying bills, making sure we're adding some software for the year ahead. We're migrating our CRM, so we're in the process of doing that. And then other days, I'm on the phone talking to people, talking to prospective investors, or doing Zoom calls such as this. So there's a lot more since COVID. There's a lot more that's done over Zoom these days. Initial meetings, and then we travel to meet them if we kind of get to the next step. So yeah, a bunch of different things, and that's what keeps it interesting.
And can you go in a little bit into depth about what underwriting a deal would look like, what the intention of that is, what it means, a little bit more into depth on that?
Yeah, sure. If it's mo ma the majority of the financings we do are for private fund managers. And so there's a bunch of different components to that. Obviously it helps if they've raised some kind of a fund before, even if it's a small one, just so they know what that experience is like. And, maybe they've got a few investors that they know themselves. But we underwrite their prior track record. We'll interview them and see what they say, and then we'll try and corroborate that either by requesting financial data or by doing our own independent research as well. We do reference checks on them, so we'll call around. Sometimes they give us the references. Sometimes we'll call independently and say, "Do you know this person? What's their integrity like? Are they honest? Are they upstanding? Do they do what they say they're going to do?" Um, and then probably the more conventional things that people are kind of looking for. What's their strategy? Does it fit the market? Do we think we can raise money for it? All of those criteria. It doesn't matter. In some cases, we run across people that have fantastic strategies, but we just don't think we can raise that money,
Hmm.
right? And
Right.
so it's frustrating because you think it's a good deal, but like the market won't take it.
Hmm. Okay. And so having been in your own business for quite a while now, what would you say it takes to be successful in your position or career, or at least um people around you?
Yeah, I find, I think uh, many of the attributes are, success in other careers as well. So, curiosity, an enthusiasm for what you're doing, that helps too. Because this position is primarily a sales and marketing position. You have to know something about whatever the financial market you're specializing in. But having some social skills certainly help. So I find you generally have to like people and have to like to want to meet new people and talk to different types of people because there's a whole bunch of different types of people out there. So that's important. And just, it's all these professions I'm sure that you and your friends are interviewing people for, they're all very competitive. So being persistent is a key attribute whatever you're doing. You may not be successful after one day talking to people on the phone, right? You got to really hang in there, and that's where the enthusiasm helps. If you believe in what you're doing and you think it's a really good investment, that gets you through the good times and gets you to the other side.
Great. And so then this one's a little bit of a tricky one. If you were going back, knowing what you know now, what maybe one thing or a couple of things that you would change when you were beginning your career if you were to take a similar route again, or maybe you wouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting question. So I know if knowing what I know now, I would not have gotten an MBA. I would have gotten a law degree. A lot of what we do is legally driven. So when I got my business degree, I specialized in finance and accounting, but I took a business law school class, and I would probably do the inverse of that this time around. I would take some finance classes and take some accounting classes, but I would get a law degree and probably specialize in corporate law. I've learned a lot of law, over the last 20 odd years that I've been doing this, and I've had partners in the past who were lawyers who have I feel they have an advantage because they can talk about the deal, but they can also talk about the legal component to it. And I also feel that when you're on the other side, it helps if you've got a financial background and you know how to translate that into the legal documents as well.
Hmm. Okay. So basically, there's kind of like a gap between lawyers and the business people, and having the background of both would help bridge that gap. So you're kind of saying maybe you would go for something like a business degree in your undergraduate and then law school and then work to combine the two.
Maybe something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, but the graduate degree would be the law degree and not the MBA. I've found that would be like I think that would be much more useful for me.
Okay. Makes sense. And kind of one last thing. Um, if there's any underlying advice that you would give, just kind of to wrap up, that you would give to people our age, that are looking to pursue a career similar to yours, or maybe some sort of variant, any one piece of advice that you would give that you've noticed in your time to share.
Yeah, um I think for young people, uh one uh one interesting thing is they don't like to talk on the phone. I think they're much more used to text and email, and I use those. I use those as well. But in particular, with older people, probably maybe 45 years and older, they grew up talking on the phone.
Hmm.
And I was just thinking about this. I was talking to a guy last month, and we do deals with him on a reasonably frequent basis, and he was saying no one calls him up anymore, right? So I mean, he wants people to call him on the phone and talk about,
Yeah.
new opportunities. Sending an email is not enough. And so, so yeah, it's, practice talking on the phone. Don't be afraid to call someone on the phone, and leave a message. And I've just noticed it in general with younger people. They have a hesitancy about jumping on the phone.
And it's interesting you mentioned that. Why, how come talking on the phone is so much more important? Is it only because people kind of that grew up are used to that, or is it because a lot gets lost in translation, let's say over email or text?
That's right. I think it's two things. I think it's what you grew up doing that you tend to be more familiar with. So people like me of a certain age, and probably your parents too, right? We grew up talking on the phone, on a telephone, not even a cell phone, just like, a landline. So we're used to communicating on the phone. And then secondly, I think a lot of nuance is lost on email. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to jump to a conclusion when they read something, as opposed to catch the tone of someone's voice when they're communicating something. So that's why I think that aspect of it's very very important.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's pretty much all my questions. Thank
Oh,
you so
great.
much for your time. I really appreciate your answers.
Yeah. Thanks, Naveen. Good spot speaking with you.
Thank you.